days. That's all Declan Garrett had left before a judge would decide if he deserved to keep his daughter. 18 days before the state of Oregon could rip Rosie from his arms and hand her to a woman who'd walked out when the girl was 4 years old. 18 days to prove that love mattered more than the numbers in a bank account, that working 2 jobs meant devotion instead of failure, that a father who showed up exhausted was better than a mother who'd never shown up at all. But right now, none of that mattered. Right now, at 9:52 on a Tuesday night in late September, Declan just wanted to get home. 14 hours under car hoods and behind a coffee counter had left his lower back screaming and his eyes burning. The Honda Accord's dashboard clock mocked him with its red glow. He'd promised Rosie he'd be home by 10. He had 8 minutes. Johnny Cash's voice drifted from the speaker's gravelly and broken singing about hurt. Declan's fingers tapped the steering wheel in time with the bass line. Rain had started 20 minutes ago. Light at first, now building into something angrier. The wipers struggled to keep pace. Lightning cracked across the Oregon sky, turning Highway 89 into a strobe-lit nightmare. On the dashboard taped beside the speedometer, Rosie's drawing smiled at him. Crayon stick figures, a tall man with brown hair, a little girl with curls, both holding hands under a yellow sun. Her 6-year-old handwriting sprawled across the top. "Daddy, you're my hero." His throat tightened. Hero. What kind of hero couldn't afford a lawyer better than the overworked public defender who'd already told him the odds weren't good? What kind of hero worked himself half to death and still heard his daughter ask if they'd be okay? The preliminary hearing paperwork sat in the passenger seat. Pages he'd read so many times, the words had burned into his brain. October 13th, 2:00 p.m. Courtroom 4B, judge to be determined. Victoria Garrett versus Declan Garrett. Custody of minor child Rosie Marie Garrett. Victoria's lawyer had made it sound so simple in the brief he'd filed. Petitioner has stable housing and adequate financial resources. Respondent works excessive hours at 2 jobs, leaving minor child in care of elderly neighbor. Respondent's income insufficient to provide appropriate lifestyle. Minor child would benefit from full-time maternal care. Lifestyle. As if Rosie cared about lifestyle. As if the girl who lit up every time he walked through the door, who saved her best drawings for him, who fell asleep each night clutching his hand as if she gave a damn about lifestyle. Thunder boomed close enough to rattle the car's frame. Declan eased off the gas. The smart thing would be to pull over, wait out the worst of it, but Rosie would be awake watching the door, counting the minutes past 10. She'd been having nightmares since Victoria filed the motion. Dreams about being taken away, about men in suits who wouldn't let her say goodbye. He couldn't add one more broken promise to the weight she already carried. The Mercedes appeared in his headlights like an apparition. Black, sleek hazard lights pulsing red against the storm. It sat half on the shoulder, rear end jutting into the slow lane. 2 figures stood beside the open driver's door, waving frantically as rain hammered them. Declan's foot moved toward the brake, then hesitated. "Keep driving. You've got problems of your own." Victoria's lawyer would love to hear about Declan stopping on a dark highway at night, about what that said about his judgment, his priorities. But the figures were small, young, and scared, he could tell even through the rain and distance. His eyes flicked to Rosie's drawing. If she was ever stranded somewhere terrified and alone, he'd want someone to stop. He'd pray someone would stop. The Honda slowed. Declan checked his mirrors, empty highway behind him, and pulled onto the shoulder 15 feet behind the Mercedes. Rain drummed louder now that he wasn't moving. Through the windshield, he could make out more details. 2 women practically identical, early 20s maybe. Designer jeans, dark with water. Leather jackets that probably cost what he made in a week. Mascara running in black rivers down their faces. "What are you doing, Declan?" He was already unbuckling his seatbelt. The cold hit him the second he opened the door. Rain soaked through his flannel shirt before he'd taken 3 steps. The women looked up as he approached, and he saw the relief flood their faces so fast it made his chest ache. His voice had to fight the thunder to be heard. "Car trouble." The one on the left nodded, shivering hard enough that her teeth chattered. "It just died. We've been here over an hour." Her sister's voice cracked around the edges, close to breaking. "Our phones are dead. No one stopped. You're the first." Declan counted in his head. An hour. On this highway, in this storm, dozens of cars must have passed them. Hundreds of people had made the same choice he'd almost made. "Drive on. Not your problem. Stay safe." He moved past them to the open hood. "Mind if I take a look?" The relief in their simultaneous response would have been funny if it hadn't been so desperate. "Please." The engine bay told the story in 10 seconds. Battery terminals crusted with corrosion connections loose enough to wiggle. Alternator belt frayed down to individual threads. Serpentine belt not much better. The battery itself cold to the touch, dead for hours probably. Declan closed the hood, rain streaming down his face. "Your battery's shot. Alternator's failing too. You're not going anywhere tonight without a tow truck." The women exchanged glances that said they'd already known, had just needed someone to confirm the nightmare was real. The one on the right spoke first, voice steadier now that someone was here, someone was helping. "We should call our father, but—" She trailed off. Her sister picked up the thread. "He's probably in court prep. Never answers after 9. Something in the way she said it, resignation wrapped in old wounds, made Declan pause. He knew that tone. He'd heard it in his own voice 2 years ago when he'd finally understood Victoria was never coming back. "Look, I can give you a ride. There's a Hampton Inn about 12 miles up the highway. You can call a tow in the morning." The women hesitated. He watched them do the calculation every woman had to do when a strange man offered help in the dark. Trust versus danger, rain versus risk. The one on the left made the decision first. "You'd do that." Declan thought about Rosie, about the world she'd grow up in, about the kind of men he wanted her to encounter if she was ever this scared and stranded. "Can't leave you out here." He gestured toward his Honda. The contrast would have been comical if everything hadn't been so miserable. Their Mercedes probably cost more than he'd earn in 5 years. His Accord had fast food wrappers in the back and a passenger seat held together with duct tape. But neither woman complained. They just grabbed their designer luggage from the Mercedes trunk and followed him through the rain. Inside the Honda, they filled the space with the smell of expensive perfume and wet leather. Declan cranked the heat. The wipers resumed their losing battle against the storm. He pulled back onto the highway tires, hydroplaning for a heart-stopping second before finding purchase. "I'm Celeste." The passenger seat woman pushed wet blonde hair from her face. She gestured to the back. "This is my twin sister, Vivian." "Declan." He kept his eyes on the road. The rain made it hard enough without adding conversation to the mix. "Thank you for stopping. Seriously." Vivian's voice came from behind him, quieter than her sister's but no less genuine. "So many cars they saw us and they kept going." Declan navigated around a fallen branch, the Honda shuddering. "People are scared these days. Can't blame them for being careful." "But you stopped." Celeste pointed this out like it was the crucial piece of evidence in a trial. His response came without thinking. "I have a daughter." The words hung in the air between them. Declan could feel their attention sharpen focus. If she was ever stranded somewhere scared and alone, I'd hope someone would stop for her. The silence that followed felt different than before, thoughtful instead of awkward. The wipers beat their rhythm. Lightning illuminated the highway in stuttering flashes. Miles passed. Vivian noticed the toy elephant wedged beside the back seat. "Your daughter's—" Declan smiled despite his exhaustion. "Yeah, Rosie. She's 6. That's Button's her favorite. Goes everywhere with her." "Sweet name." Celeste's voice had warmed several degrees. "Do you see her often?" The question landed like a punch. Declan's jaw tightened. His grip on the steering wheel went white-knuckled. He hadn't meant to answer. The words just forced themselves out through the crack she'd opened. "Every chance I get. which might not be for much longer. 18 days. He could have stopped there, should have stopped there, but the weight he'd been carrying for months found the opening and pushed through. My ex-wife is suing for full custody, hearing in 18 days. Celeste twisted in her seat to look at him directly. What? Why? She says I'm unfit because I work too much, don't make enough money, can't provide a stable home. The bitterness leaked through despite his best effort to keep it neutral. His voice dropped lower, the truth of it scraping his throat raw. Sometimes it feels like the world's already decided I'm not good enough, that working 2 jobs to keep a roof over our heads means I'm failing instead of trying. Vivian leaned forward between the seats. Her hand almost touched his shoulder, then pulled back. Our dad's like that too, always working. We barely see him. Celeste jumped in, and Declan heard something in her voice. He recognized the particular pain of being ignored by someone who should love you. He has all the money in the world, fancy house, important job, everyone respects him. But we'd trade it all for one dinner where he's actually present, not checking his phone, not thinking about the next case. He thinks providing means everything. Vivian's voice carried old arguments, old disappointments. Doesn't understand we just want him there. Declan glanced at her in the rearview mirror. You should tell him that. Both women laughed, but there was no humor in it. We have, multiple times. He says we're young, we don't understand real-world pressures. Celeste's fingers twisted together in her lap. Says when we're older, we'll see why his career has to come first. Sounds lonely. The observation slipped out before Declan could stop it. Too personal. He didn't know these women, didn't know their father, but he knew loneliness when he heard it. It is. Celeste's admission was barely audible over the rain. Money doesn't fix loneliness, it just makes the empty rooms bigger. They drove in silence after that. The storm began to ease as they put miles between themselves and its center. Declan's mind wandered between the women's story and his own. The irony cut deep. He was fighting to keep Rosie while these girls were fighting just to be seen by the father who'd never left. You seem like a good dad, Declan. Vivian's voice pulled him back to the moment. The kind who stops in storms, the kind who shows up. His throat tightened around words that wouldn't come. Finally, he managed to. I try. That's more than most people do. Celeste twisted to look at her sister, then back to Declan. When she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of someone who understood exactly what he was facing. Our father wins every case he tries, every single one, but he lost us a long time ago. She paused, and Declan could feel her choosing the next words carefully. Don't let anyone tell you that showing up isn't enough, because it's everything. The Hampton Inn parking lot appeared like salvation. Declan pulled up to the entrance and shifted into park. The rain had gentled to a steady drizzle. Celeste and Vivian gathered their designer luggage from the trunk, their movements slower now, reluctant. Before heading inside, Celeste turned back. Mascara still streaked her face, but her eyes were clear. Thank you, Declan. You didn't have to help us. She paused, and something shifted in her expression. Determination, maybe, or hope. I hope the judge sees what we see, that you're exactly the kind of father your daughter needs. Declan's voice came out rougher than he'd intended. Me too. They disappeared through the hotel's automatic doors. Declan sat with the engine running, watching rain streak the windshield. His phone showed 10:38. Rosie would be asleep by now, curled up on the couch with buttons tucked under her arm, waiting for a father who'd promised he'd be home by 10. Another broken promise. Another check mark in Victoria's column. He drove through the storm highway 89, emptier now. Most people smart enough to be home. His apartment building's parking lot held the usual collection of tired vehicles, pickups with rust eating their beds, sedans held together by prayer and duct tape, one motorcycle that hadn't run in months covered by a tarp that had seen better years. Declan climbed the exterior stairs to the second floor, legs heavy. His key stuck in the lock. It always stuck, and he had to jiggle it just right before the door finally opened. Inside, Maggie Walsh looked up from her knitting. Lamplight caught the silver in her hair and deepened the lines around her eyes. She'd lived in the apartment next door for 30 years, had raised 3 children in this building, had buried a husband here too. Now she spent her evenings helping Declan stay afloat, asking for payment he couldn't afford and refusing it when he tried. Her voice carried a soft Irish lilt that never quite faded despite 40 years in America. She tried waiting up for you, poor lamb. Couldn't make it past 10. Rosie lay on the couch, wrapped in the blue blanket Declan's mother had crocheted before she died. Brown curls fanned across the cushion. Buttons the elephant was clutched tight against her chest. She looked impossibly small. Impossibly precious. Declan crossed the room and knelt beside her, careful not to wake her yet, just needing this moment to look at her to remind himself why he dragged himself through 14-hour days, why he'd stop in storms for strangers, why he'd fight Victoria and her expensive lawyer and a system that measured fathers in dollars instead of devotion. He pulled $20 from his wallet money earmarked for groceries and held it out to Maggie. She waved it away like she always did. "Keep it, lad. You need it more than I do." "Maggie, I won't hear another word. Besides, Rosie's an angel. It's no trouble." Declan's eyes burned. He blinked hard. "I couldn't do this without you." Maggie stood, gathering her knitting into a canvas bag worn soft with use. "You're doing fine. Better than fine." She paused at the door, one hand on the frame. "That girl loves you something fierce. Anyone can see it." After she left, Declan returned to the couch. He brushed Rosie's curls back from her face. Her skin was warm, flushed with sleep. She stirred at his touch, and those blue eyes, his eyes fluttered open. "Daddy. Hey, sweetheart, I'm home." Rosie's sleepy smile could have powered the city. "I missed you." "I missed you too, baby." He kissed her forehead, breathing in the scent of the strawberry shampoo she insisted on using because it smelled like summer. "Go back to sleep, okay?" But Rosie sat up instead, rubbing her eyes with small fists. The blanket fell to her lap. She wore her favorite pajamas, the ones with dancing bears that were getting too small, but she refused to give up. "Daddy, I had a dream." Something in her voice made Declan's stomach drop. "Yeah, what about you and me? We were at the park, and Mommy was there too, but she was yelling, and then men came and took me away from you." The words hit like fists. Declan pulled her into his lap, feeling how her whole body trembled. "Oh, Rosie, are they going to take me away, Daddy?" 6 years old. She shouldn't have to know words like custody and hearing and petition. She shouldn't wake up afraid that men in suits would separate her from the only parent who'd been there every single day of her life. Declan held her tighter. "No, baby, no one's taking you anywhere." "But Mommy said—" Rage flashed hot and immediate. Victoria had talked to Rosie about the case, had planted fear in their daughter's head. Declan forced his voice to stay calm, gentle. "What did Mommy say?" "She said I might have to live with her and Travis, that you can't take care of me properly." The words came out small and scared. Rosie looked up at him with eyes too old for 6 eyes that had learned too young that adults didn't always tell the truth, that promises got broken, that mothers left. "Daddy, Travis scares me. And Mommy, she smells funny sometimes." Declan's heart cracked open. Rosie had noticed. Of course she'd noticed. Children always noticed what adults tried to hide. He took her small face in his hands. "Listen to me, Rosie, really listen." She nodded, solemn. "Mommy's wrong. I can take care of you. I will take care of you. No matter what happens in that courtroom, you are my daughter. You will always be my daughter." "But what if the judge believes Mommy?" Her voice broke on the question. Declan felt his own throat close. "Then I'll fight harder. I'll show them how much I love you, how much you mean to me." Rosie's small arms wrapped around his neck. "I don't want to leave you, Daddy." "You won't. I promise." The promise sat heavy in the air between them. Declan had no idea if he could keep it. The public defender had been honest about their chances. Victoria had money stability, the presumption that mothers were naturally better caregivers. Declan had exhaustion, an elderly neighbor, and 2 jobs that barely covered rent. But he couldn't tell Rosie that, couldn't let her carry that fear. She pulled back just far enough to look at his face. "Do you pinky promise?" Declan linked his pinky with hers, their fingers absurdly disproportionate. "I pinky promise." "Okay." She settled back against his chest, her breathing slowly evened out. Within minutes she was asleep again, the resilience of childhood allowing her to find peace even in the middle of a nightmare. Declan sat holding her until his legs went numb. When he finally carried her to bed, she barely stirred. He tucked the blanket around her, made sure Buttons was within reach, and stood in the doorway watching her sleep. Nothing in this world, not money, not judges, not anything is stronger than a father's love for his daughter. The words formed in his head without conscious thought. He whispered them into the darkness like a prayer, like a vow, like a challenge to whatever forces thought they could take her from him. In the kitchen, reality waited. Bills spread across the small table like accusations. Rent $875 due in 5 days. Electricity $127. Water $48. Groceries whatever was left, which wasn't much. Maggie's babysitting $80 a week that she refused, but he insisted on setting aside anyway. His bank account showed $312.48. Next paycheck came in 3 days. It would cover rent with $43 to spare. The public defender was free technically, but Declan had seen the stack of files on the man's desk, had watched him juggle 3 phone calls during their only meeting, had heard the exhaustion in his voice when he'd said their case was difficult but not impossible. Difficult but not impossible. What kind of odds were those when your daughter's future hung in the balance? Declan's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He stared at it for 3 rings before answering. "This is Celeste." The voice was tentative, like she wasn't sure calling had been a good idea. "Vivian and I told our father about you, about what you did tonight. He wants to meet you." Declan's heart kicked against his ribs. "Meet me why?" He didn't say exactly, but he seemed affected by what we told him, about how you stopped, about your situation. She paused, and Declan heard her take a breath. "Tomorrow 1 p.m. if you're free. It's important." He said to tell you it's important. Declan's mind raced through possibilities, none of them making sense. "Where?" "Courthouse Cafe, 412 Main Street. He'll find you." "Okay, I'll be there." "Thank you, Declan." "And Declan, yeah, I meant what I said, about you being a good father." The call ended. Declan stood in his cramped kitchen holding a phone that had just delivered either hope or another complication he couldn't afford. Why would their father want to meet him? What difference could one storm rescue make to a man who, by his daughter's description, barely noticed them? Sleep came hard that night. When it finally arrived at 1:47 a.m., it brought dreams of courtrooms and gavels and a little girl crying as strangers pulled her away. The alarm blared at 5:30. Declan's body screamed protest. 4 hours of fractured sleep felt like none at all. But Rosie needed breakfast, needed someone to walk her to school, needed the routine that said everything was normal even when nothing was. He found her in the kitchen, already dressed in the yellow dress with sunflowers that was her current favorite. She'd put it on backwards. The tag stuck out under her chin. "Morning, princess." Declan kissed the top of her head and gently turned her around to fix the dress. "Did you sleep okay after?" "Uh-huh." Rosie climbed onto a chair and watched him crack eggs into a pan. "Daddy, can we go to the park this Sunday?" "Of course. It's our tradition." The eggs sizzled. Declan added cheese, the cheap kind that came in plastic wrappers, and scrambled everything together. Toast popped up. He spread margarine thin, making it last. "Can I bring Buttons? Buttons goes everywhere with you." Rosie giggled, and the sound was better than any paycheck, any victory, any relief Declan could imagine. He'd work 114-hour days to hear that giggle. He'd fight any battle, face any judge, endure any humiliation. They walked to school hand in hand. Fall had arrived in Portland overnight. The air carried that particular October crispness that promised winter wasn't far behind, leaves crunched under their feet red and gold and brown. Rosie jumped on the biggest ones, delighting in the way they shattered. "Daddy, look!" She pointed to a squirrel racing up an oak tree, its tail a question mark of fur. "I see him. He's getting ready for winter. Do squirrels get cold? Sometimes. That's why they gather nuts. We should give him some of our nuts." Declan smiled. "That's kind of you, baby. Maybe we can leave some in the park on Sunday." Riverside Elementary appeared ahead. Brick and glass American flags snapping in the wind. Children streamed through the main entrance, parents trailing behind with backpacks and lunch boxes. Declan felt the usual twist in his gut. Most of these parents didn't work 2 jobs. Most of them would be home when school let out. Most of them weren't counting down 18 days until a judge decided their fitness. Rebecca Morgan stood by the entrance, greeting students with the kind of genuine warmth that made her Rosie's favorite teacher. She looked up as they approached. "Good morning, Declan." "Morning, Rosie." "Morning, Ms. Morgan." Declan's response came automatically. Rebecca had been teaching first grade for 7 years. She knew every student's name by the second day of school. She stayed late for parent conferences. She actually gave a damn. "Ready for today's math quiz, Rosie?" Rosie bounced on her toes. "Yes, I practiced with Daddy." "I bet you did great on the practice." Rebecca's eyes met Declan's over Rosie's head. There was something there, concern maybe, or sympathy. Did she know about the custody case? Small schools meant small communities. Everyone knew everyone else's business eventually. Declan knelt to Rosie's level. "Have a great day, sweetheart. I love you." Rosie threw her arms around his neck, squeezing tight. "Love you too, Daddy. Don't work too hard. Never too hard for you." He watched her skip inside, yellow dress bright against the brick walls. She turned at the door to wave. He waved back. Then she was gone, swallowed by the building, and Declan was alone with his fears and the weight of 18 days pressing down on his shoulders. At Riverside Auto Repair, James Sullivan was already in the bay working on a Subaru Outback with a blown head gasket. He looked up as Declan clocked in, taking in whatever was written on Declan's face. "You look like hell." "Rough night." James wiped his hands on a rag that had been red once but was now mostly black. "How many days left?" Everyone at the shop knew. They'd known since Victoria filed the motion. They'd all offered what they could, extra hours, words of encouragement, the kind of quiet solidarity that working men gave each other when words weren't enough. 18. Christ. James shook his head, then seemed to physically set it aside. "Chevy Silverado needs brake pads. Should be straightforward." "Got it." Declan grabbed his tools and lost himself in the work. This he understood. Battery terminals that needed cleaning. Brake pads worn down to nothing. Oil that needed changing. Problems with clear solutions. Problems you could fix with your hands and your knowledge and your willingness to get dirty. The radio played Springsteen, The River, and Declan hummed along while his hands moved through the familiar choreography. Remove wheel, remove caliper, remove old pads, check rotor, install new pads. It was meditation. It was therapy. It was the only time his brain stopped spinning through worst-case scenarios. By noon, 3 more vehicles had cycled through. Declan's phone alarm went off at 12:35. He'd set it that morning to remind him about the meeting. 1 p.m., Courthouse Cafe. A father who wanted to meet the man who'd helped his daughters. Declan washed up in the shop's bathroom, scrubbing grease from under his fingernails with the pumice soap that never quite got them clean. He changed from his work coveralls into jeans and a flannel shirt he kept in his locker. Still not fancy. Still obviously working class, but clean at least. James caught him on the way out. "Where you headed?" "Meeting someone. Court-related." "Hope it's good news." "Me too." The Courthouse Cafe sat 3 blocks from the main courthouse building, close enough that lawyers and judges filled it during lunch hours. Declan had never been inside, never had reason to. His world didn't typically intersect with people who wore suits and decided other people's fates. Inside the cafe was nicer than he'd expected. Wood paneling, leather booths, the smell of coffee that cost more than the drip they served at Brewed Awakening. Men and women in expensive clothes clustered at tables talking in the particular language of legal professionals. Motions and precedents and discovery. Declan felt immediately out of place. A man sitting alone in a corner booth looked up from his newspaper. Their eyes met and something clicked into recognition. The man stood. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with silver hair and a jaw that looked carved from granite. Navy suit that probably cost more than Declan's monthly rent. But his eyes held something unexpected, warmth, and what looked like genuine interest. "Mr. Garrett." The man extended his hand. "Yes, sir, you're Celeste and Vivian's father." "I am, Richard Blackwell. Please sit." They shook. Richard's grip was firm but not aggressive. Declan slid into the booth across from him, feeling the leather creak under his weight. A waitress appeared immediately young, pretty clearly used to serving this crowd. "What can I get you, gentlemen?" Richard gestured to Declan. "Coffee, black." "Same for me." She disappeared. Richard folded his newspaper, The Oregonian, and set it aside. For a long moment he just looked at Declan, not judging exactly, assessing. "My daughters called me last night from the hotel." Richard's voice was measured, controlled, a courtroom voice. "They told me about a stranger who stopped in the storm when no one else would, who gave them a ride, who showed them kindness when he had no reason to." Declan shifted in his seat. "I just gave them a lift. It wasn't anything special." "On the contrary," Richard leaned forward slightly, "they told me dozens of cars passed them. Dozens of people who saw two young women stranded in a storm and decided it wasn't their problem." He paused and something flickered across his face. Pride, maybe, or regret. "You stopped when you were exhausted, when you had your own troubles, when you had every reason to keep driving." The coffee arrived. Declan wrapped his hands around the cup, grateful for something to do with them. "Look, Mr. Blackwell." Richard, I appreciate you taking the time to meet me, but I don't understand why." "They told me about your daughter." The words stopped Declan cold. "About the custody hearing, about your ex-wife's claims, about how you're fighting to keep Rosie." Richard picked up his coffee but didn't drink, just held its steam rising between them. "I had to meet you, had to see for myself the kind of man who stops in storms." Declan's throat went tight. "I'm just trying to be a good father. And succeeding, I suspect." Richard set down his cup. "May I ask when your hearing is scheduled?" "October 13th, afternoon session." Something shifted in Richard's expression. He went very still. "Courtroom 4B." Declan pulled the paperwork from his back pocket, unfolding it on the table. Found the line. "Yes. How did you know?" Richard closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they held something that looked like pain. "Because that's my courtroom. I'm the assigned judge for your case." The cafe noise faded to white hum. Declan stared at the man across from him, the father of two girls he'd helped the judge who would decide if he kept Rosie. The coincidence was too massive to process, too strange to be real. You're the judge." "I was, until now." Richard's voice stayed steady, but something underneath it wavered. "I have to recuse myself immediately. We have a personal connection. It would be unethical for me to preside over your case." Relief and disappointment crashed into each other. Relief that he wasn't being judged by someone he'd met personally. Disappointment that he was losing what felt like the only advantage he'd accidentally gained. "So someone else will decide. Judge Eleanor Hayes. She's fair and tough. She won't be swayed by emotion or theatrics." Richard pulled out a business card, slid it across the table. "But I can help you in other ways." Declan picked up the card. Heavy stock, embossed lettering. Catherine Ashford, Ashford and Associates. Family law. "I can't afford, but..." "Kate is my cousin. She's the best family law attorney in Oregon. maybe on the West Coast. Richard's intensity ratcheted up a notch. She takes pro bono cases for veterans. You served, correct? Navy, 6 years, aircraft mechanic on the USS Theodore Roosevelt. Then call her, today. Tell her I sent you. She'll take your case. Declan looked at the card, then at Richard. This didn't make sense. Powerful men didn't help strangers. They didn't hand out expensive lawyers like party favors. Why are you doing this? Richard was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried decades of regret. Because my daughter saw something in you I haven't seen in years. A man who puts others first, who stops when he doesn't have to, who chooses kindness over convenience. He looked down at his coffee. And because they told me very clearly that I've failed them, that I've been so focused on my career that I've missed their lives, that they'd trade every advantage I've given them for one dinner where I'm actually present. His eyes came back to Declan. You're fighting to keep your daughter while I'm realizing I've already lost mine. Not legally, but in every way that matters. The pain in those words was so raw that Declan had to look away. It's not too late. They still want you there. How do you know? Because they talked about you with hurt, not anger. And hurt means they're still hoping you'll show up. Richard absorbed this like a blow, then slowly he nodded. Perhaps you're right. He straightened businesslike again. Call Kate. Today. Don't wait. You need proper representation and she's the best I know. Declan held the card like it might disappear. Thank you. I don't know what else to say. Say you'll fight for Rosie with everything you have. That's all I need to hear. I will. I promise. They stood. Richard extended his hand again, and this time the handshake felt like something more, a covenant. A passing of responsibility. Declan, my daughters were right about you. You're going to win this. I hope so. No, you will, because you show up, and in the end that's what matters most. Outside, Portland's October sun fought through clouds. Declan stood on the sidewalk, Catherine Ashford's card in his hand, and pulled out his phone. His fingers shook slightly as he dialed. A woman answered, professional, efficient. Ashford and Associates, how may I help you? Hi. I need to speak with Catherine Ashford about a custody case. Ms. Ashford's schedule is fully booked for 3 months. I can take your information for our waiting list. Judge Richard Blackwell sent me. He said to tell her he sent me. The pause that followed felt significant. Please hold. Classical music filled Declan's ear. He paced the sidewalk. 2 minutes stretched into 3. Then a new voice, colder, sharper. This is Catherine Ashford. Ms. Ashford, my name is Declan Garrett. Your cousin Richard gave me your number. I have a custody hearing in 18 days. I know. He texted me 10 minutes ago. Her tone suggested this was an inconvenience, not an opportunity. I don't have time for new clients right now. Declan's heart sank. I understand. I'm sorry to bother. However, the words stopped him. Richard doesn't ask me for favors often. When he does, it's because someone deserves help. Another pause. Declan could hear papers rustling. Come to my office, 4 p.m. today. Bring all documentation, custody agreements, financial records, everything related to your case. Don't be late. I'll be there. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I only take cases I can win, so you better not be wasting my time. The line went dead. Declan stared at his phone. Catherine Ashford sounded nothing like her cousin. Where Richard had been warm and encouraging, she was ice and edges. But if she was as good as Richard claimed, ice and edges might be exactly what he needed. He texted James that he needed to leave at 3:30. Spent the next 3 hours working with unusual intensity, as if tightening bolts and replacing filters could somehow prepare him for whatever came at 4 o'clock. At 3:45, he was in his Honda navigating downtown Portland traffic. The address led him to a high-rise near Pioneer Square, glass and steel reaching toward clouds, the kind of building where every square foot cost more than his entire apartment. Inside, marble floors reflected overhead lights. The directory listed Ashford and Associates on the 15th floor. Declan rode the elevator with 2 women in power suits who ignored him completely. The reception area made the courthouse cafe look modest, leather furniture that didn't creak, Abstract art that probably cost 5 figures. Awards and diplomas covering one wall. Catherine Ashford had degrees from Harvard and Stanford, had won Attorney of the Year 3 times, had a track record that made Declan's public defender look like a first-year law student. The receptionist smiled with professional warmth that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Garrett?" "Yes. Ms. Ashford is expecting you down the hall, last door on the right. She doesn't like to wait." The hallway stretched 30 feet. Declan's boots work. Boots steel-toed, covered in dried mud he'd tried to scrape off, seemed too loud against polished wood. The last door stood open. Catherine Ashford was on the phone when he arrived, standing by floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a view of the city Declan had never seen from this angle. She held up one finger, "Wait," without turning around. "I don't care what precedent they're citing, David. Find me a better precedent. That's why I hired you." Her voice could cut steel. No excuses. I need it by tomorrow morning, or you can update your resume." She ended the call and turned. Declan had expected someone older. Catherine Ashford looked 35, maybe 40. Auburn hair pulled into a severe bun. Green eyes that assessed him in 2 seconds and found him wanting. Black pantsuit that probably cost what he made in a month. No jewelry except small pearl earrings. Beautiful objectively, but beautiful the way a knife was beautiful, all dangerous edges and cold precision. "Mr. Garrett, you're late." Declan checked his watch, 4:02. "Traffic on the Morrison Bridge." "I don't accept excuses." She gestured to a chair facing her desk. "Sit. We have 18 days to build your case, and you just cost us 2 minutes. Declan sank into the chair across from Kate's desk, feeling the leather grip him like judgment. She remained standing, arms crossed, radiating the kind of controlled authority that came from winning battles other people lost. "Tell me about Rosie. Age, health, academic performance." The questions came rapid-fire, clinical. Kate's pen hovered over a yellow legal pad. 6 years old, perfectly healthy. First grade at Riverside Elementary, straight A's in everything. Living arrangements. 2-bedroom apartment in Riverside Gardens. She has her own room. It's small but clean, safe neighborhood. Kate's pen scratched across paper, her handwriting sharp and precise. Employment status. Full-time mechanic at Riverside Auto Repair, 8 years there. Also part-time barista at Brood Awakening evenings and some weekends. Total hours per week. Declan did the math in his head, knowing how it would sound. 60, sometimes more. Kate's eyes flicked up sharp as scalpels. "And during those 60 hours, who watches Rosie?" "My neighbor, Maggie Walsh. She's retired, lives next door. Rosie's known her since we moved there 2 years ago." More notes. Kate's face revealed nothing, no approval, no judgment, just calculation. "Tell me about your ex-wife." The shift in topic felt deliberate, designed to catch him off guard. "Victoria. We married young. I was 25, she was 24. Divorced 2 years ago when Rosie was 4. Reason for divorce. She left, said she wasn't ready to be a mother, needed to find herself." The bitterness leaked through despite his effort to sound neutral. Kate noticed her pen stopped moving for half a second, but she didn't comment. "And now she wants custody. According to her lawyer, she's ready now. Claims I'm unfit because I work too much and don't make enough money. Does she have grounds?" Declan's frustration boiled over. "On paper, maybe. In reality, she abandoned her daughter for 2 years. Didn't call, didn't visit, didn't send birthday cards. Now she wants full custody because suddenly she's decided to play mother." Kate set down her pen, leaned forward with both palms flat on the desk. "Mr. Garrett, I need you to understand something fundamental. Family court doesn't care about fairness. It cares about evidence presentation and legal precedent." Her voice dropped lower, every word weighted. "Your love for Rosie is irrelevant if I can't prove Victoria is demonstrably worse. So I'll ask you again. Does she have issues? Substance abuse, violence, financial instability, mental health problems?" Declan thought about Rosie's words, "Mommy smells funny sometimes," about the fear in his daughter's voice when she mentioned Travis. "She drinks heavily, I know that much, and her boyfriend Travis..." Rosie's scared of him, says he yells at Victoria, says he smells strange. Kate's entire demeanor shifted. She sat down, pulled the legal pad closer. Define strange. I don't know specifics, but Rosie's instincts are good. If she's scared, there's a reason. Has Travis ever hurt Rosie? Not that I know of. Victoria only has supervised visits, hasn't been alone with Rosie since the divorce. Then why seek full custody now? Declan shook his head. That's what I can't figure out. 2 years of nothing, then suddenly this. Kate leaned back, fingers steepled under her chin. For the first time since he'd walked in, she looked thoughtful instead of interrogatory. I'll find out. She pulled a file from her desk drawer, flipped it open. I've reviewed the preliminary filing. Victoria's attorney is Jonathan Pierce, expensive, aggressive, wins more than he loses. He's built her case around financial stability and maternal instinct. But she's not stable, and her instincts told her to walk away, which is why we're going to destroy her credibility piece by piece. Kate stood again, moved to the window. Portland spread below them, afternoon sun painting the buildings gold. I'll take your case. Relief crashed through Declan so hard he almost couldn't breathe. Thank you. I don't know how to. My standard rate is $500 per hour. This case will require approximately 80 hours of work plus court time. That's $40,000 minimum. The number hit like a physical blow. Declan's entire year's salary wouldn't cover it. I can't afford that. I thought maybe payment plan or... However... Kate turned from the window. Richard called in a favor. I'm taking this pro bono. Pro bono means free. But I don't do this often, Mr. Garrett. So if you waste my time, if you lie to me, if you make me look foolish in court, I will drop you so fast your head will spin. Are we clear? Crystal. Good. Now here are my rules. She ticked them off on her fingers. Total honesty, no secrets. If there's anything in your past that can be used against you, I need to know immediately. Second, you follow my instructions exactly. If I tell you to avoid Victoria, you avoid her. If I tell you to document something, you document it. Third, no contact with the opposing party without my permission. And fourth, she fixed him with a look that could freeze concrete. Don't fall apart on me. I need you steady, focused, and ready to fight. Can you do that? Declan met her eyes without flinching. I can do that. Then we start now. I need to interview your witnesses, the neighbor, your boss, Rosie's teacher. I need to investigate Victoria employment history, financial records, criminal background, if any. And I need you to compile every document related to Rosie, medical records, school reports, custody agreements, anything showing you've been her primary caregiver. She moved back to her desk, pulled out a business card, wrote a number on the back. This is my direct line. You can call any time, day or night, if something happens, if Victoria approaches you, if Rosie says anything important, I need to know immediately. Declan took the card, added it to the one Richard had given him. What are our chances? Kate's expression softened fractionally, the first crack in her armor. Ask me that after I've investigated. Right now, I don't make promises I can't keep. Thursday morning arrived cold and gray. Kate sat in her office at 7 a.m., coffee going cold beside her as she reviewed Declan's case for the third time. Something about it had kept her awake until 2, her mind turning over facts and possibilities. She picked up her phone, dialed a number she knew by heart. Howard, it's Kate. I need a full background on Victoria Garrett and Travis Donovan. Everything criminal, financial, employment, social media. Dig deep. Howard Brennan's gravelly voice came back immediately. How deep? Subpoena level deep. I need ammunition. You got it. Give me a week. You have 5 days. She hung up and dialed again. Rebecca Morgan, please. This is Catherine Ashford, attorney for Declan Garrett. The call transferred 3 times before a young woman's voice answered, warm and slightly out of breath. Ms. Ashford, I'm happy to help however I can. I need to meet with you regarding Rosie Garrett. Are you available this afternoon? I have a planning period at 2:15. Would that work? Perfect. I'll be there. Kate arrived at Riverside Elementary at 2:10, her heels clicking against linoleum that had seen better decades. The building smelled like chalk and cafeteria food and children, a scent she'd almost forgotten from her own school years before boarding school had replaced it with furniture polish and old money. Rebecca Morgan's classroom held that peculiar organized chaos of first-grade alphabet posters, student artwork, a reading corner with beanbags shaped like animals. The teacher herself looked younger than Kate had expected, maybe late 20s, with kind eyes and flower on her cardigan sleeve from some craft project. "Ms. Ashford." Rebecca shook her hand, gestured to a chair designed for 6-year-olds. "Sorry about the seating situation." Kate folded herself into the tiny chair, feeling absurd but determined not to show it. "Tell me about Rosie Garrett." Rebecca's face lit up the way teachers' faces did when discussing students they genuinely loved. "Rosie's exceptional, bright, engaged, curious. She's reading at a 3rd-grade level. Her math skills are above average. But more than that, she's kind. She helps other students who struggle. She shares her supplies without being asked. She's the kind of child who makes teaching worthwhile." Kate took notes, letting Rebecca talk. "And her father?" "Declan." Rebecca's smile widened. "Declan never misses a parent-teacher conference. Never. He volunteers for field trips even when I know he's working double shifts. Last month we went to the Science Museum. He took a personal day to chaperone. Has he ever been late for pickup?" Rebecca considered this carefully. "Twice this school year. Both times he called ahead to let me know. Both times he had legitimate work emergencies. Both times he was apologetic and grateful that I could wait with Rosie." "What about Victoria Garrett?" Rebecca's expression shifted, warmth replaced by something harder. "I've never met her. Not once in 2 years." Kate's pen stopped moving. "Never. Never. She's not on the emergency contact list. She's not on the pickup authorization. I've never seen her at school events or conferences. Until 3 weeks ago, I didn't know Rosie had a mother." "What happened 3 weeks ago?" Rebecca's voice went flat, professional, the tone of someone recounting something she'd reported officially. "Victoria showed up unannounced during dismissal. She approached Rosie directly, claiming she was her mother and had come to take her home. I refused. She wasn't on the authorized list. Victoria became aggressive, shouted in the hallway that I couldn't keep her from her own daughter. Rosie heard, came out of the classroom crying. Victoria tried to grab her." Kate leaned forward despite the ridiculous chair. "What did you do?" "I called security and placed myself between Victoria and Rosie. Victoria was escorted off school property. I filed a report with the principal and the police. I have copies of both. I'll need those. Already made you a set." Rebecca pulled a manila folder from her desk, handed it across. Kate flipped through incident report, police report number, photographs of Victoria being escorted out by school security. "Ms. Morgan, you understand you'll likely be called to testify. I'm counting on it." The steel in those words surprised Kate. This wasn't just a teacher doing her duty. This was someone who cared deeply about a student and would fight to protect her. "One more question. In your professional opinion, is Rosie better off with her father?" Rebecca didn't hesitate. "Absolutely. Declan shows up. He's present. He's engaged. Rosie feels safe with him. You can see it in how she lights up when he walks through that door. Victoria terrified her in 5 minutes. That tells you everything you need to know." Friday afternoon, Kate knocked on the door of apartment 2B in Riverside Gardens. The building had seen better days, peeling paint-rusted railings, a broken window on the first floor patched with cardboard. But the hallways were clean. No drug paraphernalia, no obvious signs of danger. Maggie Walsh answered, wearing an apron dusted with flour, silver hair pulled back in a bun that matched Kate's own severe style. Her Irish accent softened the words. "You must be Ms. Ashford. Come in, dear. I've got tea on." The apartment was small but immaculate. Crocheted blankets draped over furniture that had been fashionable in the 70s. Family photographs crowded every surface, children, grandchildren, a wedding photo from decades past showing a young Maggie and a handsome man in a military uniform. "Your husband," Kate nodded toward the photo. "Sean, gone 12 years now. God rest his soul." Maggie poured tea into delicate china cups that seemed incongruous with the surroundings. "You're here about Declan and little Rosie." "I am. How long have you known them?" 2 years, since they moved in next door." Maggie settled into an armchair, gesturing for Kate to take the couch. "Declan works himself to the bone for that child. I watch her most evenings while he's at the coffee shop. She does her homework at my kitchen table. We read together, play games. She's a delight." "Does Declan pay you for this?" Maggie's chin lifted slightly. "He tries. I refuse. I'm retired. My children are grown. Rosie keeps me young. But he sets money aside for you anyway." It wasn't a question. Kate had seen Declan's meticulous budget records, $80 every week, labeled Maggie. That somehow never left his account because Maggie kept refusing it. "He's got more pride than sense sometimes, but that's not a bad quality in a father." Kate sipped tea. She didn't want buying time to phrase the next question. "Have you ever had concerns about Rosie's welfare, ever seen signs of neglect or abuse?" "Never." Maggie's response was immediate and fierce. "That child is loved, Ms. Ashford. Clean clothes every day, healthy meals, homework done, bedtime at 8:30 sharp. Declan reads to her every night, even if he doesn't get home until 11. I hear his voice through these thin walls, stories about princesses and dragons and brave little girls who saved the kingdom." Kate's chest tightened unexpectedly. She ignored it. "What about Victoria Garrett?" "Met her once, month ago." Maggie's voice went cold. "Came pounding on Declan's door at 11 at night, drunk, shouting that he'd stolen her daughter. Woke up half the building. Declan came down. I'd called him immediately and got her to leave. Calm as anything, never raised his voice once, even when she called him vile names." "Did you call the police?" "Declan asked me not to. Said it would make things worse for Rosie in court. So I wrote down everything instead, date, time, what was said, just in case." Kate set down her teacup. "Mrs. Walsh, you strike me as someone who doesn't suffer fools. So tell me honestly, is Declan a good father?" Maggie looked at her with eyes that had raised 3 children, buried a husband, survived more years than Kate had been alive. "He's the best father I've ever seen, and I've seen plenty." Saturday morning, Kate met James Sullivan at Riverside Auto Repair. The shop sat in an industrial section of Portland that the city's revitalization efforts hadn't reached yet. Chain-link fences, potholes, the smell of motor oil and welding metal. James was exactly what Kate expected: early 50s, permanently grease-stained hands, the kind of solid competence that came from 30 years under car hoods. He led her to a small office that doubled as a break room, offered coffee from a pot that looked like it had been brewing since the Reagan administration. "Declan's the best mechanic I've got. Reliable, skilled, never calls in sick unless Rosie's actually sick. Then he takes her to the doctor first, comes in after." James leaned against a workbench covered in tools Kate couldn't name. "How long has he worked here?" 8 years. Started as junior mechanic. Now he runs the bay most days." "Why does he work part-time at a coffee shop if he's your best mechanic? Couldn't you give him more hours here?" James's expression shifted, respect mixed with something that looked like admiration. "I offered. Better pay, more hours, promotion to shop manager. He turned it down." "Why?" "Coffee shop hours let him walk Rosie to school and pick her up. Said no amount of money was worth missing that." Kate's pen stilled on the page. She looked up. "Most men would take the money." "Most men aren't Declan Garrett." James pushed off the workbench, moved to the window overlooking the bay where 2 mechanics worked on a Ford pickup. "You want to know what kind of father he is? Last winter we had a customer, rich guy, owned half the office buildings downtown. His Mercedes broke down on Christmas Eve. He offered Declan triple pay to fix it that night. Declan said no. Said he'd promised Rosie they'd make cookies and watch movies. Rich guy offered quadruple. Declan still said no. He turned down that much money. Walked out at 5 p.m. like it was any other day. Customer had to take a taxi home." James turned back to face her. "That's who you're defending, Ms. Ashford. A man who chooses his kid over everything else, every single time." Sunday morning, Kate's phone rang at 9:30. Declan's number. "Ms. Ashford, Kate." Sorry to bother you on the weekend. His voice carried an edge she hadn't heard before, worry mixed with something else. Hope, maybe. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong exactly, Rosie and I are going to the park, our Sunday tradition, and I thought maybe you'd want to come. To observe how we interact for the case. Kate looked around her penthouse, 1,500 square feet of silence and expensive furniture, and the crushing weight of nothing to do except work. She'd planned to review depositions, prep for a different case, anything to avoid the emptiness. Which park? Laurelhurst. Will be at the playground near the pond, around 11. I'll be there. She hung up and stared at her closet full of suits. Nothing appropriate for a park. Finally, she pulled out jeans she'd bought 2 years ago and never worn, paired them with a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than Declan's monthly grocery budget, but at least wasn't a suit. Laurelhurst Park was beautiful in the October sun. Trees blazed red and gold. Families clustered around the playground, children shrieking with parents hovering nearby with that particular mix of attention and exhaustion. Kate found Declan pushing Rosie on the swings. The little girl's laughter carried across the playground, pure and unself-conscious. She wore the yellow sunflower dress Kate had seen in the photographs, brown curls flying as the swing arced higher. Declan saw Kate approaching and waved. Rosie noticed, craned her neck to see who had arrived. "Miss Kate!" The swing was still moving when Rosie jumped off. Kate's heart lurched at the danger, but the girl landed perfectly, knees bent, already running toward her. "You came." Rosie grabbed Kate's hand like they were old friends instead of near strangers. The touch was warm and slightly sticky, probably from the muffin visible in a baggie sticking out of Declan's jacket pocket. "Hi, Rosie." Kate's voice came out softer than she'd intended. She looked up to find Declan watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Hope this is okay. The park thing." "It's fine. Good for the case, actually. Shows routine and stability." But it wasn't fine. Being here watching this felt like stepping into a world Kate had locked herself out of years ago. A world of Sunday mornings and playground laughter and small hands trusting enough to grab yours without hesitation. Rosie dragged her toward the slide. "Come on, Daddy pushes me on the swings, but I need someone to catch me at the bottom. I don't think, please." Those blue eyes, Declan's eyes, looked up with such hope that Kate found herself nodding despite every instinct screaming this was unprofessional, inappropriate, dangerous. She stood at the bottom of the slide while Rosie climbed to the top. The girl came down fast, shrieking with delight, and Kate caught her, automatically steadying her before she toppled sideways. Again, 12 times. Rosie went down the slide 12 times, and 12 times Kate caught her, and somewhere around the 8th time Kate realized she was smiling. Actually smiling. Not the professional smile she'd perfected for clients and opposing counsel, but something real and unguarded. Declan appeared beside her after Rosie ran off to the monkey bars. "Thank you for coming. It's good for the case." She repeated it like a mantra, like saying it enough times would make it true. Right, the case. But his tone suggested he knew better. They sat on a bench while Rosie played. Kate found herself watching the girl with a professional eye. Healthy, coordinated, socially engaged with other children, no signs of trauma or neglect. Everything she needed to testify about Rosie's well-being. Except that wasn't all she was watching. She was watching how Rosie checked over her shoulder every few minutes to make sure Declan was still there. How she ran to him to show off when she conquered the monkey bars. How she called him over to meet a new friend, introduce him with obvious pride. "Daddy, this is Emma. She's 6 too. Can we have a play date?" Declan exchanged numbers with Emma's mother, a tired-looking woman with twins in a stroller, and promised to coordinate schedules. Around noon, Rosie announced she was hungry. Declan pulled out the baggie with the muffin, then looked at Kate. "We usually go to the ice cream place after. Tradition. Want to come?" Kate should have said no. Should have drawn the line between attorney and client, maintained professional distance. Instead, she heard herself say yes. The ice cream shop was exactly what Kate expected: family-owned, worn linoleum, handwritten menu on a chalkboard behind the counter. Rosie got chocolate with rainbow sprinkles and gummy bears. Declan got vanilla. Kate ordered mint chip before she could second-guess the choice. They sat by the window watching people pass. Rosie chattered about school, about her friend Mia, who could do a cartwheel, about the book Ms. Morgan was reading to the class. She was bright and articulate and completely unself-conscious in the way only children could be. "Ms. Kate, do you have kids?" The question landed like a slap. Declan's eyes widened. "Rosie, that's personal." "It's okay." Kate set down her spoon. "No, I don't have children." "Why not?" Children had no filter, no sense that some questions hurt to answer. "I've been too busy with work." Rosie considered this seriously, ice cream forgotten. "But family is more important than work. Daddy says so." Kate had no response. This 6-year-old had just summarized everything wrong with Kate's life in one innocent observation. Declan rescued her. "Different people make different choices, Rosie. That's okay." But his eyes, when they met Kate's, held something that looked like understanding, or maybe pity. Kate wasn't sure which was worse. After ice cream, they walked back toward the parking lot. Rosie held both their hands, swinging between them, singing something about butterflies. Kate felt the warmth of that small hand in hers and wondered when she'd last held anyone's hand. When anyone had wanted to hold hers. At Kate's BMW, Rosie released her hand to hug Declan's leg. "Thank you for bringing Miss Kate, Daddy. I like her." "Me too, baby." Declan's response was quiet, almost too quiet to hear. But Kate heard it, felt it settle somewhere in her chest that had been empty for too long. After Rosie climbed into Declan's Honda, Declan lingered. "Thank you for coming. I know it wasn't about the case." Kate's walls slammed back up. "Of course it was about the case. I needed to observe your interaction, assess Rosie's well-being." "Kate." Her name in his mouth stopped the lie cold. "What?" "You smiled today. Real smiles, not lawyer smiles." Kate's throat tightened. "I should go. I'll call you Monday with updates on the investigation." She got in her car before he could say anything else, before those perceptive eyes could see any deeper into the cracks forming in her carefully constructed armor. That night, Kate sat in her penthouse, surrounded by case files and empty takeout containers and the crushing silence of 1,700 square feet that had never felt like home. She thought about Rosie's laughter, Declan's quiet strength, the way a 6-year-old had diagnosed her life's fundamental emptiness in 10 seconds. Her phone rang. Richard's number. "How's the case?" Kate summarized the witness interviews, Howard's ongoing investigation, the strength of their position. "And Declan, how is he?" Something in Richard's tone suggested he was asking about more than the case. "He's good, solid, everything you said he was." Silence on the line. Then carefully, "Kate, I know you." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you're falling for him." Kate's hand tightened around the phone. "I'm his attorney. I'm professional. I'm lying to yourself." Richard's voice was gentle, which somehow made it worse. "It's okay to let someone in, Kate. Not everyone is Tyler." Tyler. The name alone tasted like failure. The fiancé who'd left 5 years ago because Kate loved her career more than him. Because she worked 80-hour weeks and canceled dinner plans and checked her phone during what should have been intimate moments. "Everyone leaves eventually, Richard. Declan won't. He's not built that way." "How do you know?" "Because he stopped for my daughters when he had every reason to keep driving. Because he works 2 jobs to keep his daughter. Because he turned down money to make Christmas cookies. That's who he is." After the call ended, Kate sat staring at her city view, thinking about choices and consequences and the life she'd built that looked successful from every angle except the one that mattered. Monday morning, Howard Brennan walked into Kate's office and dropped a file thick as a dictionary onto her desk. "You're not going to like this, or actually you're going to love it." Kate flipped open the cover, started reading, and felt something like savage satisfaction bloom in her chest. Victoria Garrett was a disaster. Arrest number 1, March 15th, traffic stop on Highway 26. Officer found 2 grams of cocaine in the center console. Charge dropped due to illegal search. Officer hadn't had probable cause to search the vehicle. But the arrest was still on record. The photographs still showed Victoria's dilated pupils, her agitated behavior. Arrest number 2, June 22nd, house party raid. Police found Victoria with 5 grams of cocaine. Arrested along with 7 other people, including Travis Donovan. Charges dropped due to prosecutor error in filing paperwork. But again, arrest on record, photographs showing Victoria clearly, high witness statements describing erratic behavior. She's using actively. Howard nodded. Gets better, or worse depending on perspective. He pulled out employment records. Fired from Horizon Marketing on July 5th. Official reason: erratic behavior, missed deadlines, suspected substance abuse, refused drug test. Kate scanned the termination letter. The language was careful. Company lawyers had drafted it to avoid lawsuit, but the message was clear. Victoria had been too impaired to work, had refused to prove otherwise, and had been terminated. She threatened to sue. They settled out of court with a non-disclosure agreement. But we can subpoena the records. Do it. Howard pulled out another document. Travis Donovan, 35, arrested same night as Victoria in June, charged with possession with intent to distribute 15 grams of cocaine found in his car. Took a plea deal, 3 years probation, mandatory drug testing, community service. He's a dealer. Small time, but yeah, no legitimate employment. Instagram shows him posing with drugs and cash and guns, real winner. The final section was financial records. Kate studied Victoria's bank statements with growing certainty. Savings account that started at $45,000 18 months ago, inheritance from Victoria's grandmother. Now down to $12,000, large cash withdrawals every week, anywhere from $500 to $1,500. ATM withdrawals at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. Classic addiction pattern. At this rate, she's broken 3 months. Howard leaned against the wall, arms crossed. So here's your case. Victoria's actively using cocaine, living with a convicted drug dealer, burning through her savings to fund her habit, and got fired for being too high to function. Meanwhile, she's trying to get full custody of a 6-year-old. Judge is going to crucify her. Kate allowed herself a small smile. Get me everything in admissible format. I want documented proof of every arrest, every charge, every withdrawal. And find me her dealer. Already did. Howard pulled out a final set of photographs, surveillance shots showing Victoria meeting a man in a parking lot, exchanging cash for a small package. Marco Santos, known dealer. These were taken last week, September 28th. Kate studied the photographs, clear shots showing faces, the exchange timestamps, everything they needed. Can we get Santos to testify? Not without immunity, but we don't need him. We have the photos, the pattern, and if Victoria denies drug use, we impeach her with the arrests. Kate closed the file, her mind already constructing the cross-examination. She'd start gentle, let Victoria lie about being clean, then systematically destroy her credibility with arrest records, employment termination, financial evidence, photographs. Howard, this is perfect. Glad you think so, because you're going to destroy her. Kate's smile faded. Destroying Victoria meant saving Rosie, meant protecting Declan, meant... She cut off the thought before it could complete. This was about the case. Just the case. Tuesday afternoon, Kate called Declan to her office to review the evidence. He arrived at 4, still in work clothes, apology already forming for the grease under his nails. Don't worry about it. Sit. She spread the file across her desk, arrest records, photographs, employment documents, bank statements. Your ex-wife is a cocaine addict. Declan stared at the papers like they might bite. I knew she had problems, but this... 2 arrests. Both dropped on technicalities, but the arrests themselves are solid evidence. Fired for drug use, living with a dealer, burning through money to fund her habit. Kate's voice stayed clinical, professional, even as she watched Declan's face cycle through shock, anger, fear. And she wants custody of Rosie. She wants the child support payments, wants the appearance of being a fit mother, wants to feel like she didn't fail. Declan's hands clenched into fists. Will this be enough to stop her? More than enough. Judge Hayes will see Victoria's unfit. We'll get full custody supervised visitation at best. Relief crashed across Declan's features so strong it was almost painful to witness. Then something else followed realization. You did all this in 4 days. I don't do anything halfway. Kate gathered the papers, organized them back into the file with precise movements that masked the satisfaction she felt. Winning. She was going to win this case, protect this child. Give Declan what he deserved. Thank you. His voice cracked slightly on the words. Don't thank me yet. We still have to get through the hearing. Victoria's lawyer is good. He'll try to spin this claim she's changed, that she's in recovery. We need to be ready. I trust you. The simple statement hit harder than it should have. People didn't trust Kate. They hired her, paid her, followed her instructions. But trust, that was something different, something more. We should celebrate. Sort of. Declan's suggestion came hesitantly, like he expected rejection. What did you have in mind? Dinner. You, me, and Rosie. To say thank you properly. Every professional instinct screamed no. Attorney-client boundaries, emotional distance, objectivity. That's not necessary. Please. One word, quiet, but loaded with something that made Kate's carefully constructed walls tremble. Just dinner, as friends. Rosie hasn't stopped talking about the park. Kate looked at him, this man who worked himself to exhaustion, who'd stopped in a storm for strangers, who loved his daughter more than pride or money or anything else. This man who somehow impossibly had made her smile on a Sunday morning. Wednesday evening, Kate drove to a restaurant she'd never have chosen, family-style Italian place with red checkered tablecloths and a children's menu featuring crayons. Declan and Rosie were already there when she arrived, sitting in a booth near the back. Rosie spotted her first, waving enthusiastically. Miss Kate, we got you the seat with the window. Kate slid into the booth across from them, feeling absurdly formal in her work clothes, while they were casual and comfortable and clearly belonging in a way she never quite managed. Thank you for coming. Declan's smile was genuine, warm, unguarded. Thank you for inviting me. The waiter came. They ordered pepperoni pizza for Rosie, margarita for Kate. Something with sausage for Declan. While they waited, Rosie chattered about her day, about art class where they'd painted self-portraits, about recess, where she'd learned to do monkey bars without help. Look, she showed Kate her palms, small blisters forming from the effort. Daddy says they'll turn into calluses and make me stronger. Kate found herself studying those small hands, thinking about effort and consequence and strength earned through struggle. The food arrived. They ate and talked and laughed, actual laughter, not the polite chuckles Kate deployed at networking events. Rosie told terrible jokes from her joke book. Declan shared a story about a customer who'd insisted their car made a noise like a dying walrus. Kate surprised herself by contributing a story about a judge who'd fallen asleep during closing arguments. Did you wake him up? Rosie's eyes were huge. I had to, very carefully. How do you wake up a judge carefully? You clear your throat very loudly and say, "As I was saying, Your Honor," in a voice that suggests they definitely heard you the first time. Rosie dissolved into giggles. Declan's eyes met Kate's across the table, and something passed between them that had nothing to do with the case or professional boundaries or careful distance. After dinner, Rosie announced she needed the bathroom. The moment she disappeared, Declan leaned forward. Can I ask you something? Kate's defenses went up automatically. Sure. Why family law? Richard mentioned you could do any kind of law you wanted. Corporate pays better. Criminal is more prestigious. Why this? Kate traced patterns in the condensation on her water glass. My father was a family law attorney. He built the firm from nothing. I watched him help people, really help them, not just win cases but change lives. I decided that's what I wanted to do. He must be proud. He died before I graduated law school. Heart attack at his desk working late on a custody case. Kate's voice stayed steady through practice, through years of telling this story without letting it hurt. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. But it wasn't. Not really. Some losses never stopped being fresh. Is that why you work so much, to honor him? The question cut too close to truths Kate didn't examine. Maybe. Or maybe I just don't know how to do anything else. Rosie returned, preventing further excavation of Kate's motivations. They paid the bill. Kate grabbed it despite Declan's protest and walked outside into October evening air that bit with the promise of winter. At Kate's car, Rosie hugged her without warning or permission, small arms wrapping around Kate's waist. Thank you for coming, Miss Kate. You're nice. Kate stood frozen for a heartbeat before her arms moved of their own accord, returning the embrace. You're nice too, Rosie. After they left, Kate sat in her car watching them drive away, Declan's beat-up Honda with its duct-taped seat, and Rosie's laughter visible even from a distance. She felt something crack open in her chest, something she'd sealed shut 5 years ago. When Tyler had walked out saying she was married to her career, that she didn't know how to love anything that couldn't be won in a courtroom. Maybe he'd been right. But sitting there in a restaurant parking lot, still feeling the warmth of a 6-year-old's hug, Kate wondered if maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to learn. Thursday morning shattered whatever peace Kate had found. Declan called at 11 a.m., voice tight with barely controlled rage. Victoria showed up at the shop. Kate's hand tightened around her phone. What happened? She stormed in, screaming about how I'd hired you to ruin her life, about how I had no right to investigate her. I stayed calm, told her if she had nothing to hide, she had nothing to worry about. She lost it completely. Background noise suggested he was outside, away from customers. Did she threaten you? Said she'd tell the judge I was abusive during our marriage, that I hit her. It's a lie, Kate. I never touched her. I know. Did anyone witness this? James, he recorded the whole thing on his phone. Kate felt the pieces click into place. Send me that video immediately. This shows premeditation to commit perjury. It's perfect for us. There's more. Declan's voice dropped lower. She showed up at the apartment tonight with Travis. Tried to force her way in to see Rosie. Maggie called the police. Kate was already grabbing her keys. Where are you now? Still at the apartment. Police just left. I'm on my way. 25 minutes later, Kate pulled into Riverside Gardens. Police cars were gone, but evidence remained. Neighbors clustered in doorways, curiosity and concern mixing on their faces. She climbed to the second floor and found Declan's door open. Maggie standing guard while Declan held Rosie. The little girl was crying, not the dramatic tears of a skinned knee, but the deep, shaking sobs of genuine terror. Mommy was yelling. Why was she yelling, Daddy? Kate stepped inside. Declan looked up, relief flooding his features. Kate, tell me what happened. While Declan recounted the incident, Victoria demanding entry, Travis getting aggressive, police arriving. Kate watched Rosie. The child had gone pale, eyes too wide, body trembling despite her father's arms around her. Kate found herself crossing the room before conscious thought engaged. She knelt beside them. Hey, Rosie, remember me? Rosie's tear-streaked face turned toward her. Ms. Kate. Yeah, your mom can't take you. I won't let her. Promise. Kate linked pinkies with the girl, feeling the fragility of that small hand against hers. Pinky promise. Rosie's sobs gradually subsided. Eventually, Declan carried her to bed. Kate heard his voice through the thin walls, low, gentle, reading a story about a brave princess who saved her kingdom. Maggie made tea Kate didn't want, but accepted anyway. They sat in Declan's tiny living room, surrounded by the evidence of a life lived on too little money and too much love. Second-hand furniture, library books stacked on the coffee table, Rosie's drawings covering the refrigerator. When Declan finally emerged, Rosie asleep, he looked 10 years older than his 34 years. I can't keep living like this. Every time the phone rings, every time someone knocks on the door, I think it's her. Think she's going to take Rosie. Kate set down her teacup. She won't. The police report helps us. Shows Victoria violates boundaries, creates dangerous situations. Combined with everything else, 9 days. Declan collapsed onto the couch beside her, close enough that Kate could feel his exhaustion radiating like heat. 9 days until the hearing. Then this is over. Then she's mine forever. 9 days. Kate heard herself echo, voice softer than her usual courtroom steel. They sat in silence, the comfortable kind that came from shared purpose and growing trust. Kate should leave, should maintain distance, should remember all the reasons this was complicated and problematic and dangerous. Instead, she stayed. Somewhere around midnight, Declan's voice broke the quiet. I know this is complicated. You're my lawyer, I'm your client. But I can't stop thinking about you. Kate's breath caught. Every rational thought screamed to shut this down, maintain boundaries, protect herself. Declan, I know. He looked at her, and those blue eyes held something that made Kate's carefully constructed defenses crumble like sand. After the hearing, if you still feel, I will. The certainty in his voice should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like the only solid thing in a world that had spent too long spinning without foundation. Kate took his hand, let their fingers intertwine. Sat in a small apartment in a building that needed repairs, holding hands with a man who made less in a year than she spent on clothes and felt more at peace than she had in the 1,700-square-foot penthouse that supposedly represented success. After the hearing, she whispered it like a promise, like a possibility, like the beginning of something she'd stopped believing she deserved. They sat together until Kate finally left at 2 a.m., driving home through empty Portland streets, thinking about choices and consequences, and the terrifying possibility that maybe, just maybe, she'd found something worth more than winning. Thursday night arrived like a countdown clock Declan couldn't silence. October 12th. Tomorrow would decide everything. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., Judge Eleanor Hayes would look at evidence and witness testimony and 2 parents claiming fitness, and she would choose. One of them would walk out with Rosie. One of them would walk out with nothing. Declan sat at his kitchen table at 1:47 in the morning, documents spread before him like tarot cards predicting his future. Kate had prepared him obsessively what to wear, how to sit, where to look, what to say if asked direct questions. But preparation couldn't stop the terror clawing up his throat every time he pictured losing. His phone screen glowed in the darkness. He stared at Kate's number, debating. She'd said call any time, but 1:47 felt too late, too needy, too much like the desperate man Victoria's lawyer would paint him as. The phone rang before he could decide. Kate's name lit up the screen. You're awake. Her voice held no surprise, just certainty. Can't sleep. Neither can I. Silence stretched between them, comfortable despite the fear underneath. Are you nervous? Declan almost laughed at the understatement. Terrified. What if it's not enough? What if Judge Hayes looks at me and sees exactly what Victoria's lawyer wants her to see? A broke mechanic who can barely keep his head above water. Then she'd be blind. Kate's response came fast and fierce. But she's not. She's fair and thorough, and she'll see the truth. How do you know? Because the truth is, you're the best father I've ever witnessed. You show up when you're exhausted. You choose Rosie over money. You stopped in a storm for strangers when you had every reason to drive past. Her voice softened fractionally. Win or lose tomorrow, and we will win. You're a good father. The best. Rosie is lucky to have you. Declan's throat closed around words he couldn't form. Finally, he managed 3 that felt inadequate but true. Thank you, Kate. Get some sleep. I'll see you at 8:30, courthouse steps. Before she could hang up, Declan's question slipped out unbidden. Kate, after tomorrow, regardless of what happens, can I take you to dinner not as attorney and client, just as us? The pause felt eternal. I'd like that. Relief and anticipation tangled in his chest. Good night, Kate. Good night, Declan. Sleep came in fragments, 20 minutes here, 15 there, punctuated by dreams of courtrooms and gavels and Rosie's face disappearing behind closing doors. When the alarm shrieked at 5:30, Declan felt like he'd aged a decade overnight. He made breakfast mechanically, eggs, toast, orange juice. Rosie emerged already dressed, having laid out clothes the night before with the seriousness of someone who understood today mattered. "Are you scared, Daddy?" she asked it while spreading jam on her toast, voice casual but eyes sharp. "A little." Lying to her felt worse than admitting fear. "But Ms. Kate says we're going to win." Ms. Kate is really smart. Rosie took a bite, chewed thoughtfully. "If we win, do I never have to see Mommy again?" The question landed like a punch. Declan knelt beside her chair. "You might see her sometimes, with supervision, but you'd live here, with me, always." "Good." Simple certainty in one word. Rosie returned to her breakfast like they'd been discussing weather instead of her future. Declan walked her to school through October morning that smelled like dying leaves and wood smoke. At the entrance, Rebecca Morgan waited with a smile that held both encouragement and worry. "Good luck today. We're all thinking of you." Rosie hugged him extra tight. "You're going to win, Daddy, I know it." "How do you know?" "Because you're my hero. Heroes always win." If only courtrooms worked on 6-year-old logic. At 8:20, Declan stood on the courthouse steps in James's borrowed suit hands, shaking so badly he shoved them in his pockets. Kate appeared at 8:25, black suit that probably cost more than his car, hair pulled back in that severe bun game face locked in place, but when she saw him, something shifted in her expression. Softened. She crossed the distance between them and straightened his tie without asking permission. "Ready? As I'll ever be." "You look good. You look terrifying." Kate's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Good, that's the point." Inside courtroom 4B was smaller than Declan expected. Wood paneling absorbed sound, making everything feel muffled and significant. Victoria sat at the opposing table with Jonathan Pierce, expensive suit, perfect hair, the predatory confidence of someone who won more than he lost. Travis lurked in the back row, trying to look respectable and failing. The gallery held faces Declan recognized. Maggie in her Sunday best, James with hands scrubbed clean of grease, Rebecca Morgan, who'd taken a personal day, and in the very back, Richard Blackwell sitting quietly with Celeste and Vivian flanking him. 3 people connected to this story by a storm and a choice to stop. The bailiff's voice cut through murmured conversations. "All rise. The Honorable Judge Eleanor Hayes presiding." Judge Hayes entered with the purposeful stride of someone who'd been making difficult decisions for decades. Late 50s, steel-gray hair eyes that missed nothing. She settled behind the bench and surveyed the courtroom like a general assessing a battlefield. "Good morning. Be seated." Everyone complied. "Garrett versus Garrett, petition for modification of custody regarding minor child Rosie Marie Garrett. Counselors, are we ready to proceed?" Pierce stood smoothly. "Ready, Your Honor." Kate's response was crisp as her suit. "Ready, Your Honor." "Then let's begin. Mr. Pierce, your opening statement." Pierce moved to the center like he owned it. "Your Honor, this case is simple. A mother who made mistakes wants to reunite with her daughter. Victoria Garrett freely admits she struggled with depression after Rosie's birth. She needed time to heal, but she's done the work: therapy, stability, readiness. Now she wants to provide Rosie with the full-time maternal care every child deserves." He gestured toward Declan without looking at him. "Mr. Garrett is well-meaning but overwhelmed. 60 hours of work per week means Rosie spends more time with an elderly neighbor than her father. Victoria has stable housing, adequate resources, and most importantly, time. We ask this court to grant primary custody to the mother who's ready to prioritize her daughter above all else." Pierce sat. Judge Hayes made notes. "Ms. Ashford, your opening statement." Kate stood and Declan felt the temperature in the room drop 5 degrees. "Your Honor, Mr. Pierce is correct that this case is simple, but not for the reasons he stated. This case is about a father who never stopped showing up versus a mother who abandoned her daughter for 2 years." Kate's voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. Declan Garrett works 2 jobs because he loves his daughter. Victoria Garrett wants custody because she needs child support payments to fund an addiction. We will prove Victoria is actively using cocaine, living with a convicted drug dealer, and burning through savings to support her habit. We will prove she's unfit for custody and that Rosie belongs with the father who's been there every single day. She sat. Victoria's face had gone white. Pierce leaned over to whisper urgently. Judge Hayes studied both attorneys. Mr. Pierce, call your first witness. The petitioner calls Victoria Garrett. Victoria stood, smoothed her navy dress, expensive, conservative, clearly chosen to project maternal competence. She walked to the witness stand with manufactured confidence. After swearing in, Pierce began, Miss Garrett, tell us why you left your marriage. Victoria's voice came soft, practiced. I was suffering from severe depression. Postpartum depression that persisted long after Rosie's birth. I wasn't equipped to be the mother she needed. I made the difficult decision to step away so I could get help. And did you get help? Yes. I've been seeing Dr. Linda Patterson for 8 months. Regular therapy sessions. I've addressed my mental health issues. Where do you currently live? A 2-bedroom apartment in West Side. Rosie would have her own room decorated and ready for her. Are you employed? I'm between positions currently, but actively interviewing. I have adequate savings. Pierce nodded sympathetically. Why do you want custody of Rosie? Victoria's eyes glistened, real tears or performance. Declan couldn't tell. Because I'm her mother. Because I love her. Because I'm ready now to give her everything she deserves. Stability, attention, a home where she's the priority. No further questions. Kate stood like a predator scenting blood. Ms. Garrett, you testified you've been in therapy for 8 months. Yes, but Rosie is 6 years old. You left when she was 4. That's 2 years. What were you doing for the first 16 months after leaving? Victoria's composure cracked slightly. I was trying to find myself. The question was, what were you doing, not what you were trying to do. Kate's voice was surgical steel. I was taking time to heal. Without professional help, I needed to understand myself first. Ms. Garrett, have you ever been arrested? The courtroom went silent. Victoria's face drained of color. Those charges were dropped. Answer the question. Have you ever been arrested? Yes. The admission came barely audible. How many times? Twice. For what offenses? Victoria's lawyer half stood. Your Honor, these charges were dismissed. Judge Hayes cut him off. Overruled. The arrests are matters of public record. Answer the question, Ms. Garrett. Victoria's voice shook. Possession of controlled substances. Specifically cocaine, correct? Yes. Kate pulled documents from her folder. March 15th traffic stop, 2 grams found. June 22nd house party raid, 5 grams found. Both arrests within the last 7 months, is that correct? Yes, but I wasn't convicted. Because one was dismissed due to illegal search and the other due to prosecutor error, not because you were innocent. Correct. Silence. Ms. Garrett, the charges were dropped. Kate changed angles without warning. You testified you're between positions. When did you last work? July. And why did you leave that position? Personality conflict with my supervisor. Kate slid a document to the bailiff. Your Honor, I'd like to enter Exhibit A, Ms. Garrett's termination letter from Horizon Marketing. Pierce objected. Your Honor, that document is privileged under settlement agreement. Not privileged if obtained through proper subpoena, which it was. Judge Hayes examined the letter. I'll allow it. Kate addressed Victoria directly. This letter states you were terminated for erratic behavior, missed deadlines, and suspected substance abuse. It also states you refused a mandatory drug test. Is that accurate? Victoria's mask shattered. Tears started, but they looked like panic instead of grief. That was a hostile work environment. A simple yes or no. Does the letter accurately describe why you were fired? Yes. You refused a drug test because you knew you'd fail. Correct? No. Kate pulled out bank statements. Your Honor, Exhibit B, Ms. Garrett's financial records. 18 months ago, $45,000 in savings. Today, $12,000. Large cash withdrawals every week ranging from $500 to $1,500. ATM transactions at 2 and 3 in the morning. She looked at Victoria. You're burning through your inheritance to buy cocaine, aren't you? I have expenses. What expenses require $1,500 in cash at 3 a.m.? Victoria's mouth opened and closed. No sound emerged. Kate delivered the final blow. Ms. Garrett, are you currently using cocaine? No. The lie was instant reflexive. Then you'll have no objection to taking a court-ordered drug test right now. Silence crushed the courtroom. Victoria looked at Pierce with naked desperation. Pierce stood. Your Honor, this is harassment. My client's past doesn't... Judge Hayes leaned forward. Ms. Garrett, the question is straightforward. Will you submit to a drug test? Victoria's voice came as barely a whisper. I don't see why that's necessary. Because if you're clean, it proves Ms. Ashford wrong. If you refuse, it suggests you have something to hide. So I'll ask one more time, will you take a drug test? I can't. The admission hung in air, thick with judgment. Kate pressed. Can't or won't? Victoria broke. Words tumbled out in desperate, damning confession. You don't understand, I need her. Everyone will think I'm a terrible mother if I don't have my daughter, Derek said. Travis said we need the child support that will look like a real family if Rosie lives with us. Pierce grabbed her arm. Stop talking. Victoria, stop. But Victoria was past controlling. I'm not a bad person. I just made some mistakes. The cocaine helps with the stress and Travis knows a guy and it's not like I'm using around Rosie. Your Honor. Pierce's desperate interruption came too late. The damage was complete. Judge Hayes's face had gone stone. Ms. Garrett, step down. Victoria realized what she'd said. Her face crumpled. I didn't mean it came out wrong. Step down. The command left no room for argument. Victoria stumbled from the witness stand, Pierce guiding her back to their table while whispering furiously. Kate remained standing, expression neutral but eyes sharp with satisfaction. No further questions, Your Honor. Judge Hayes made notes, her pen moving with controlled fury. When she looked up, her voice could cut granite. Mr. Pierce, do you have additional witnesses? Pierce consulted with Victoria, who was now crying silently. He stood. Your Honor, in light of new developments, we request a brief recess. Denied. Do you have additional witnesses? No, Your Honor. Then we'll proceed to respondent's case. Ms. Ashford, call your first witness. Kate stood with the confidence of someone who'd already won but would take no chances. The respondent calls Rebecca Morgan. Rebecca took the stand with the calm competence of someone telling truth that needed hearing. After swearing in, Kate began. Miss Morgan, how long have you been Rosie Garrett's teacher? 2 years, first grade, both years, she repeated with me when her father requested consistency during the divorce. Describe Rosie as a student. Rebecca's face lit up. Rosie is exceptional. Reading at 3rd grade level, advanced math skills, but beyond academics, she's kind. She helps struggling classmates, she shares supplies, she makes other children feel valued. And her father, how involved is Declan Garrett? Completely. Rebecca's response was immediate, emphatic. He's never missed a parent-teacher conference. Never. He volunteers for field trips even when I know he's working double shifts. Last month at the Science Museum, he took a personal day to chaperone. He knows every friend's name, every assignment, every challenge Rosie faces. Has he ever been late for pickup? Twice this year. Both times he called ahead, apologizing, explaining work emergencies. Both times he was grateful I could wait with Rosie. Kate consulted her notes. When did you first meet Victoria Garrett? Rebecca's warmth vanished. 3 weeks ago, September 20th. Describe that meeting. Victoria appeared during dismissal without authorization. She approached Rosie claiming she'd come to take her home. I refused, she wasn't on the pickup list. Victoria became aggressive, shouted in the hallway. Rosie heard and came out crying. Victoria tried to physically grab her. I called security. What was Rosie's reaction? Terrified, she hid behind me, begging not to go with the scary lady. Those were her exact words, the scary lady. Kate introduced the incident reports as evidence. Pierce's cross-examination was brief and ineffective. Rebecca's testimony was too detailed, too damning to shake. Next came Maggie Walsh, who painted a picture of Declan's daily devotion. How he read to Rosie every night, even when he got home at 11. How Rosie's homework was always complete. How the child was clean fed, loved safe. How Victoria had appeared drunk at 11 p.m. screaming accusations. Then James Sullivan, who testified about the Christmas Eve incident, how Declan had turned down quadruple pay to make cookies with his daughter. How he'd chosen Rosie over every opportunity for advancement that would reduce his time with her. Pierce's cross-examinations grew more desperate, more futile. Each witness reinforced the same narrative: Declan showed up, Victoria didn't. Finally, Kate rested. Judge Hayes called for closing arguments. Pierce did his best with a destroyed case. Your Honor, everyone deserves second chances. Victoria made mistakes, but she's seeking help. Please don't deny a mother the opportunity to repair her relationship with her daughter. Kate stood for the last time. Your Honor, this isn't about second chances, it's about Rosie's safety. Victoria Garrett is actively using cocaine. She lives with a convicted drug dealer. She admitted on this stand that she wants custody for child support and appearances, not for Rosie's benefit. Her voice gained intensity. Declan Garrett works 60 hours because he loves his daughter. He shows up exhausted but present. He reads bedtime stories. He volunteers for field trips. He chooses her over money every single time. Kate paused, letting the courtroom absorb her next words. Rosie doesn't need a perfect parent. She needs the parent who stopped in a storm because he imagined her scared and alone. She needs the parent who fights for her not because it's easy, but because loving her is the only thing that matters. That parent is Declan Garrett. Silence followed her words. Judge Hayes reviewed her notes, the tension stretching until Declan thought he might break from the pressure. Finally, she looked up. I've presided over family court for 19 years. I've seen every kind of parent, those who love but can't provide, those who provide but don't love, those who do neither, and those rare ones who manage both despite impossible circumstances. Her eyes found Declan. Mr. Garrett, I've reviewed Rosie's school records. She's thriving academically and socially. I've heard testimony from her teacher, your employer, your neighbor, all paint the same picture. A father who shows up, who's present, who puts his daughter first despite working 60 hours a week. She turned to Victoria. Ms. Garrett, I believe you love your daughter, but love isn't enough. You have an active substance abuse problem evidenced by 2 arrests, employment termination for drug use, and your own admission on this stand. You refused a drug test. You live with someone convicted of drug distribution. You revealed your motivation for seeking custody as financial and social, not Rosie's welfare. Judge Hayes's voice went hard. Until you complete a 90-day inpatient rehabilitation program and maintain documented sobriety for 1 year, you are not fit for custody. The gavel rose. This court awards full legal and physical custody of Rosie Marie Garrett to Declan Garrett. Ms. Garrett may have supervised visitation once monthly, contingent on passing random drug tests and completing treatment. The gavel fell. The sound released something in Declan's chest that had been locked tight for months. Kate's hand found his under the table, squeezed once. Around them, the gallery erupted, Maggie crying, James pumping his fist, Rebecca smiling wide. Victoria sobbed into her hands. Pierce was already packing files, clearly planning his bill and his exit. Travis had disappeared, probably didn't want to be associated with the disaster his girlfriend had become. Judge Hayes stood. Mr. Garrett, congratulations. Go get your daughter. Outside the courtroom, Richard Blackwell waited with his daughters. Celeste hugged Declan without warning. We knew you'd win. Vivian's hug followed. Rosie's lucky to have you. Richard extended his hand. When Declan shook it, the older man's grip was warm, firm, proud. You did it. You showed up and you fought and you won. I couldn't have done it without Kate. Without you connecting us. You did it. Kate just made sure the truth was heard. Kate appeared from the courtroom, briefcase in hand. professional mask firmly in place, but when Declan looked at her, he saw the cracks, the relief, the satisfaction, the something else she wasn't ready to name. "Go get Rosie, I'll handle the paperwork. Come with me. Declan, this is your moment. It's our moment." He said it quietly enough that only she heard, but firmly enough that she understood. This wasn't attorney and client anymore. Maybe it never had been. Kate's walls crumbled fractionally. "Okay." They drove separately to Maggie's apartment, Declan in his Honda, Kate in her BMW. The contrast would have been comical if everything wasn't so significant. By the time Kate arrived, Declan was already at Maggie's door. Inside, Rosie was coloring at the kitchen table. She looked up as they entered, read the answer in her father's face before he said a word. "Daddy." Declan dropped to his knees, arms opening. "Come here, baby." Rosie launched herself across the room. He caught her, held her like she might disappear if he loosened his grip even slightly. "We won. You're staying with me. Forever." Rosie pulled back just enough to search his face. "Really, I don't have to go to Mommy's? Really? Never, ever, never, ever." She started crying, joy and relief and the release of fear she'd been carrying. Declan cried too, not caring who saw, not caring about anything except this moment and this child and the future they'd just won. Kate stood in the doorway, watching something fierce and tender warring in her expression. Rosie noticed her, extracted herself from Declan's grip and ran to her. "Ms. Kate, you did it. You saved us." Kate caught the girl, held her, felt small arms wrap around her waist with absolute trust. "Your daddy saved you. I just helped." "No." Rosie looked up seriously. "You saved both of us." The words hit harder than Kate expected. This child saw what Kate had been avoiding, that saving them had saved something in her too. Something that had been dying in a penthouse full of expensive furniture and crushing sunts. Declan stood cross to them, and suddenly Kate was included in the embrace. Three people who'd been strangers a month ago now holding each other like family. "Ice cream." Declan asked it like a question, but everyone knew the answer. They went to the same shop where they'd been before. Rosie got chocolate with every topping available. Celebration called for excess. Declan got vanilla. Kate surprised herself by ordering Rocky Road. "You got something different." Declan noticed, of course. Felt like a day for taking risks. Their eyes met across the table and the subtext hung heavy between them. After the hearing. They'd said after the hearing. And now it was after. Rosie chattered about school, about telling her friends about whether they could get a puppy now that everything was settled. Declan fielded questions with patience and humor. Kate watched them, memorizing this moment, the way afternoon sun caught Rosie's curls, the way Declan's whole face transformed when he smiled, the way she felt sitting here like she belonged instead of like she was performing belonging. Evening found them at Declan's apartment. Rosie crashed from the emotional day, falling asleep on the couch by 7. Declan carried her to bed, tucked her in. Read 3 chapters of a book about a girl detective because Rosie insisted she wasn't tired even as her eyes closed. When he returned to the living room, Kate was still there, still sitting on his second-hand couch, still wearing the suit she'd won in, still looking at him like he was worth more than his bank account suggested. "Thank you." Declan sat beside her, close enough to feel her warmth. "For what? For fighting. For believing me. For seeing me instead of just a case file." Kate's careful control wavered. "You made it easy. You're the best father I've ever witnessed. I'm just trying not to fail her. That's more than most people do." Silence settled between them, the comfortable kind that had developed over late-night phone calls and shared meals and growing trust. Declan spoke first. "I meant what I said about dinner. About us." Kate's breath caught. "Declan, I'm terrible at relationships. I'm controlling, workaholic, emotionally unavailable. I know." His interruption was gentle, certain. "And I still want to try, if you do." Kate looked at him, this man who'd stopped in a storm, who'd fought for his daughter, who somehow saw past her walls to something worth wanting. "I'm scared." The admission cost her, but felt necessary. Me too. What if I mess this up? Then we'll figure it out together. Kate let herself lean into him, felt his arm come around her shoulders, allowed herself this moment of vulnerability she'd denied herself for 5 years. Okay. One word, barely a whisper, but weighted with possibility and promise and the terrifying hope that maybe she deserved this. Declan kissed her forehead. Okay. They sat together until Kate finally left at midnight, driving home through Portland streets that felt less empty than usual. In her penthouse, she looked around at 1,700 square feet of success that had never felt like home, and wondered if maybe home was something you built with people instead of something you bought with money. 6 months later, spring arrived in Portland with cherry blossoms and longer days and the particular optimism that came after winter. Kate had sold the penthouse, moved into a modest 3-bedroom house with Declan. Not fancy, no floor-to-ceiling windows, no marble counters, no price tag that screamed success. Just a house with a yard where Rosie could play, with a kitchen where they made breakfast together, with walls that absorbed laughter instead of echoing silence back. Kate had cut her hours at the firm to 40 per week. Grace and Claire, Richard's daughters, who'd become like sisters to Kate in the months since the trial, had started working there, taking some of the load. The firm survived. Kate discovered she did too, without 80-hour weeks defining her worth. Sunday morning found them at Laurelhurst Park, their weekly tradition now. Rosie pushed herself on the swings while Declan and Kate sat on the bench, watching her soar higher with each pump of her legs. I got the promotion. Declan delivered the news casually, but Kate heard the pride underneath. Shop manager. James is retiring. Wants me to take over. That's wonderful. Kate took his hand without thinking about it, the gesture automatic after months of learning to reach for comfort instead of building walls against it. Means I can quit the coffee shop, be home by 6 every night. Rosie will love that. I already told her. She asked if it meant we could get a dog now. Kate laughed. A dog? She's been lobbying for months, says every family needs a dog. Every family. Kate repeated the words, tasting how they felt. Family. Not client and attorney, not professional relationship. Family. Is that what we are? Declan turned to face her fully. That's what I hope we are. What I want us to be. His hand reached into his pocket, emerged with a small box. Kate's breath stopped. I know we've only been officially together for 6 months. I know you're still learning how to let people in. I know this might be too fast. He opened the box. The ring inside was modest, nothing like the designer pieces Kate had admired in her former life. Just a simple band with a single small diamond, clearly bought with money saved carefully over months. But I also know that every morning I wake up next to you feels like winning. That watching you with Rosie makes me understand what partnership means. That you've become the person I want to build a life with, not an empire, not achievements, just a life full of Sunday mornings and terrible jokes and love. His voice steadied into absolute certainty. Catherine Ashford, will you marry me? Kate looked at him. This man who worked with his hands, who'd stopped for strangers, who'd chosen his daughter over advancement, who somehow had seen past her armor to the lonely woman underneath. I've never been good at this. At relationships, at vulnerability, at needing someone. I know. I'll probably work too much sometimes, forget to leave the office at the office, revert to controlling everything when I'm stressed. I know. And you still want to marry me. Declan smiled. Especially because of that, because you're learning to be imperfect with me, because you opened your heart to me and Rosie when every instinct told you not to, because you fight for what matters and I want to matter to you. Kate's vision blurred with tears she'd stopped trying to hide months ago. Yes, 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 I'll marry you. He slipped the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly, like he'd somehow known exactly her size. She looked at it, this modest ring that meant more than any expensive piece ever could, because it represented choosing love over caution. Rosie appeared, having abandoned the swings. Why is Miss Kate crying, Daddy? What did you do? Declan pulled her onto his lap. I asked Miss Kate to marry us. Rosie's eyes went huge. Really? What did she say? Kate knelt beside them. I said yes. Rosie screamed with joy, loud enough to turn heads across the playground. She launched herself at Kate, nearly knocking her over with the force of the hug. You're going to be my mom, my real mom. Kate held her, feeling the weight of that title settle around her shoulders. Not scary like she'd expected, just right. If you'll have me. Yes, yes, yes. Rosie bounced between them, pure excitement given human form. Other families smiled at the scene, recognizing the particular joy of good news even if they didn't know the details. Richard appeared from behind a tree where he'd clearly been hiding. Celeste and Vivian followed, both grinning. Did she say yes? Celeste could barely contain herself. She said yes. Rosie announced it to everyone within hearing. We helped plan it, Vivian added, looking pleased with herself. Kate looked at Declan. Conspiracy. I had to make sure it was perfect. Richard crossed to Kate, pulled her into a hug that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. Welcome to the family. Officially. Kate had family, Richard and his daughters, who'd become the siblings she'd never had. Declan and Rosie, who'd become her heart. Maggie and James and Rebecca, who'd become her community. A whole network of people connected by kindness and choice instead of obligation. The wedding happened 2 months later. Small ceremony, 80 guests, roses everywhere, because Kate discovered she loved flowers when she had someone to share them with. Rosie was flower girl in a dress the exact yellow of that sunflower one she'd worn the first time Kate met her. Grace and Vivian stood as bridesmaids, having become the sisters Kate had never expected. Kate walked down the aisle alone, her father long gone, no family to give her away, but Rosie met her halfway, small hand slipping into hers. Ready, Mom? The title still felt new, precious. With you always. They walked together to Declan, who looked at them with such love. Kate wondered how she'd survived 37 years without this. The vows were simple. Promises to show up, to love imperfectly, to choose each other daily, to build a life that mattered more than any case she'd win or money she'd make. When the officiant pronounced them married, Rosie cheered loudest. The reception was exactly what Kate would have scorned a year ago: family-style restaurant, mismatched decorations, a playlist made by committee. And it was perfect. Because perfection wasn't about expense or elegance. It was about being surrounded by people who loved you, despite knowing exactly who you were. 1 year later, June arrived with heat and humidity and the particular contentment that came from a life built right. Kate stood in the kitchen of their house, bigger now, 4 bedrooms, because the new baby needed space, making pancakes, while Declan fixed a leaky faucet because he never stopped being a mechanic at heart. Rosie, now 7, burst through the back door with the golden retriever puppy they'd finally gotten for her birthday. Mom Buddy caught a ball 3 times. He's the smartest dog ever. Kate marveled at how naturally Mom had become her name, how this chaos flower on counters, dog hair everywhere. Declan's tools scattered around, Rosie's laughter filling every corner, felt more like success than any verdict she'd won. Her phone rang. The firm. She looked at it, felt the old pull, urgency, importance, the seductive promise that work mattered most. Then she looked at Rosie, covered in mud, at Declan kissing her temple as he passed, to grab his wrench at her 6 months pregnant belly that held their daughter. She declined the call. Everything okay? Declan noticed, because he always noticed. Everything's perfect. That evening, Richard came for Sunday dinner, their standing tradition. Celeste brought her new boyfriend, a teacher who made her laugh. Vivian was in law school now, following her father's path, but determined to do it differently. Maggie joined them, having become Rosie's honorary grandmother. Around the table, conversation flowed. Rosie showed everyone her latest drawing, the family portrait that now included Kate, the baby bump buddy, the dog, and everyone she loved. Grace and Vivian argued about some legal precedent. Richard told stories about cases that made everyone laugh. Kate looked around, letting the moment sink in. This This was what she'd been missing while she built an empire of expensive things and impressive wins. This was what home felt like. After dinner, Declan found her on the porch, stars emerging in the darkening sky, thinking about that night. He meant the storm, the choice to stop the beginning of everything. Always. Kate leaned into him, his hand finding her belly where their daughter kicked. If you hadn't stopped. But I did. Why really? Because I thought about Rosie, about her being scared and alone someday, about wanting the world to be the kind of place where people help each other. He paused, and Kate felt the weight of everything that simple choice had created. I didn't know stopping would lead to you, to us, to this. Kate turned to face him. Thank you. For what? For stopping, for fighting, for seeing past the person I pretended to be to the person I wanted to become. Declan kissed her soft and certain. You saved me first, in that courtroom. You saved Rosie and me both. No. Kate shook her head, finally understanding the truth she'd been avoiding. You saved me. You and Rosie. You reminded me that life isn't about winning or achieving or building impressive things. It's about showing up, being present, choosing love especially when it's terrifying. Behind them, through the window, Rosie's laughter rang out. Inside their home, not perfect, not expensive, just theirs, family gathered. People connected by storms and choices, and the particular grace of kindness returned. 1 year ago, Kate had been alone in a penthouse, successful by every measure except the ones that mattered. Now she stood on a porch with a husband who'd stopped in a storm, a daughter who called her mom, a baby on the way, and a life so full of love it made her earlier existence feel like sleepwalking. Sometimes the person you save ends up saving you. And sometimes one act of kindness doesn't just change a life, it creates one. A life full of Sunday dinners and terrible jokes and love that fills every corner until even the biggest house feels almost too small to contain it all. But that was fine. They'd just add more rooms, more space for more love. More proof that happiness wasn't about having more, but about choosing right. About stopping when you could drive past. About fighting for what matters. About letting someone in even when every wall you'd built said don't. Kate smiled, feeling their daughter kick again, hearing Rosie call for them to come see something, knowing Declan would take her hand, and they'd walk inside together. Toward noise and chaos and imperfect, beautiful life. Toward home.